This is Global Forum TV. In our new series today, India 2025, we bring you eminent personalities from India and share their vision, comments, and opinions about what India would look like in 2025. This is your host, Amina Saeed.
The mantra to understand India is Gandhi. Once you understand Gandhi, then you know the way out is there.
If you are going to promote chauvinism of the majority, or what I call chauvinism of the majority, either through the BJP, the opposition Bharatiya Janata Party, or otherwise through one of its ancillaries of what is called the Sangh Parivar, you're going to atomize the Indian political scene.
Rift is going to be China.
Okay.
India will become, as far as some of the core issues of the world are concerned, the global laboratory. Income inequalities have never been more explosive than they are today. I mean, you know, this is it's always been an unequal and hierarchical society.
India is a very stabilizing force. Indian history, Indian culture, and Indian population, Indian immigrants abroad, all this shows that India is an extraordinarily stabilizing force with the capacity for integration.
The whole world is looking at India as the future of this entire globe.
A great country, a proud country, but a country which under capitalism is unfortunately very much unequal. A country in which a part is the urban India and the rest is rural Bharat.
Hello, welcome to Global Forum TV, a platform for global issues with global perspectives in today's global village. We continue with our series India 2025, in which we bring you eminent personalities from India, and they share their vision, their opinions, and their views where India will be in 2025 when we live in a multipolar world. Today we have one such enigmatic personality, Mr. Ardhendu Bhushan Bardhan, General Secretary of the Communist Party of India. Welcome to Global Forum TV, Mr. Bardhan. Mr. Bardhan joined the Communist Party of India in 1941 and has been with the party since. That makes it 65 years of dedicated hard work for the party. He has served a total of 4.5 years jail time for his resistance to the British colonial rule and his activities as trade unionist. He has served his country as an active politician and party member for all of his adult life. In 2004, Mr. Bardhan was one of the strategists who cobbled together a coalition of left and centrist parties headed by Sonia Gandhi, which came together in a stunning defeat to the ruling BJP, a right-wing Hindu fundamentalist party in power. Mr. Bardhan is a dedicated, humble worker and also camera shy. We bring him out of hibernation from the backstage to Global Forum TV. Welcome to Global Forum TV, Mr. Bardhan. We have a few questions to ask you about India 2025. How do you see India on the world scene today?
You see, it's the 60th year of we have completed 60 years of our independence. Obviously, we have gone ahead. The India of 2007 is not the India of 1947. There has been progress, though it is a very distorted progress, very uneven. I can speak later, you see, about all these matters.
What is India's globalization strategy and where do you see it leading in 2025?
If you ask me, if the present trend continues, then we will be in the American camp, which of course we are opposing, because we don't think that India should be a part of any imperialist gang-up. We want India to be the head and the leader of the non-aligned movement, carrying with it the other 100 countries and more which are developing countries of the third world, as they say. We have been the natural leader of this movement. That we should continue. But even so, if you see this capitalist path of development, which is not development with social justice, which means only development you see for only a top layer of people, not for the entire mass of people in the country. A development you see in which the rural areas are left behind and only the urban areas go ahead. A development in which people become millionaires and billionaires and even trillionaires, they say nowadays. A few of them.
Yes.
But the mass of the people are still, you see, living below the poverty line. Those who are not exactly below the poverty line yet are very poor. And one of the latest report has pointed out that about 78% or 80% of our people are poor.
Right.
So that is why I say, you see,
we'll ask you that question a little bit ahead. Where will India be in 2025 in relation to superpower and regional powers?
you see, the days of superpowers are gone.
Okay.
After the Soviet Union collapsed, America thought, you see, that it is the sole superpower that is left in the world. It imposed and tried to impose, you see, a unilateral world in international politics. But it cannot sustain it. Many other countries have come up. China has come up. Even the European Union has its own contradictions, you see, with the US. India is growing up. I think, you see, in the days to come, it is the Asian continent towards which, you see, the center of gravity of world politics will shift. It was in Europe at one time. It went west and became the American center of gravity. From America, it is certainly going towards Asia now.
Okay.
And I see India and China as the leaders of this.
If we were to assume that by 2025, India, China, Russia, Brazil, European Union and USA will be centers of power, what kind of alliances and rifts do you see between them?
No, my point is, you see, that if we are going to gang up with some imperialist power, then I think, you see, India will find itself isolated from the rest of the world in due course. After all these countries are not in the American camp.
Right.
As I said, even the European Union has its contradictions. About China, it has...
Let's say Brazil and Russia
Brazil.
and United States is there. Where do you see the alliances and where do you see the rift?
I think, you see, that the most normal alliance which can take place will be a strategic partnership between India, China, Brazil, Russia. These are the countries of Asia and the surrounding regions. And I think, you see, with all their potential, they will play a very major role in world politics, both in its economy, in its foreign policy, and generally, you see, in politics.
What issues will define the relationship between these countries, these powers, these emerging powers? Will it be water, oil, population, market, or energy?
You see, population I don't think is the main thing, but even though China, India, Russia, Brazil, all these countries together, you see, will make up more than 1/3 of the world's population, much more than 1/3 of the world's population. So from the population point of view also, it's very important. From the geopolitical point of view also, this importance cannot be minimized. It's a question of sharing all these energy resources, not grabbing them only for your self-interest, but sharing them, you see, in the interest of the masses, in the interest of the people. And the whole question of environment and ecology is becoming very important nowadays, you see. So it will be very important to see that they are so shared that these countries can meet the needs of the masses. Science and technology has developed to that extent. They should be able to.
What will be India's major strength in 2025 in the global village?
As I said, you see, it's talented people. It's geopolitical, you see, character. I think all these are big contributions. Natural resources that we have. Provided all these are used, you see, in the interest of the people. As I said, you see, due to all these policies that have been followed up till now, there has been a very skewed development, a very distorted development. Disparities have increased.
Right, that's my next question actually. Despite the fact that India has a dynamic and growing middle class, something almost 300 million strong, there is an equally large underclass. Where do you see them in 2025?
You see, the middle class also is not a very homogeneous body, as you are trying to say.
Okay.
There is a layer, a strata, you see, at the top, which would like to find itself, you see, in the affluent sections, racing even perhaps for becoming lower level. They are almost with the mass of workers and the peasantry that is there. In fact, one of the latest committee report has shown that 80% of our people, 78 to 80% of our people, you see, are poor. Only 26% may be officially below the poverty line. That's another matter, poverty line.
How do you define poor? Not poverty. How do you define poor?
They are not able to meet all their needs, you see, of life. I am not saying as a consumerist, because consumerism, you see, is a phenomena which you see more in the middle class and in the affluent sections. These are people who want to meet their needs. I am saying those who are poor, you see, who may be able to provide 2 meals, you see, to their families, but who are not able to give a good education. And education is becoming more and more, you see, out of the excess of the middle class even.
So this 300 million middle class, it's a misnomer?
I think it's a misnomer. There is a great Indian middle class, but then these 300 million, as I said, are not homogeneous.
Okay.
There are different layers.
What elements of soft power or smart power do you see will contribute to India becoming a superpower?
Only if I say if it is able to solve the basic poverties, issues of unemployment, poverty, illiteracy and disease. Unless we are able to do that, you see, every time you see in the Human Development Index, we will be 124 or 125 and hovering around that number. So what is the point in that?
To what extent will India's fault lines like caste, religion, region, will limit its role in its emergence as a superpower?
It's a very apt question. And that is why I say that unless we are able to solve this question of poverty, illiteracy, disease, we won't be able to make our position, you see, as a world power. And so therefore that is the basic issue, that is the priority issue that we must tackle.
What are the worst or best case scenario for India in 2025?
The best scenario will be, you see, if we are able to establish, with India's help, a world where there is peace, where development is more just, equitable, where there is social justice. Only there, and our, you see, philosophers, our leaders, even Mahatma Gandhi, for instance, we have put some values and truth, you see, in the world. We have expounded that.
Yeah.
But that has to be backed by actually our own efforts, what we can do in our own country.
Okay. What is the worst case scenario?
The worst case, you see, if we become a dependent power, you see, in the US, so-called strategic partnership, as they call it.
Okay.
If we become so dependent, I am sorry, you see, that the Indo-US nuclear deal and some of these deals, or the naval exercise which is to take place in the Bay of Bengal with US in the lead, and its other defense partners with whom they share defense treaties, Japan and Australia, and then India joining in, what for, against whom, and what is the objective of that?
Right.
So therefore I say, you see, that is the worst scenario that can take place, and then India will not be able to solve its basic problems.
Right. What are the best or worst case scenario for North-South relationship in 2025, and what will be its implications for India?
The worst solution is, you see, if the North exploits the South as it is doing today. The best scenario would be, you see, if we are able to establish what we used to say in the United Nations at one time as a new international economic order, which is based more or less on equality, equal trade and so forth. Today, you see, all these instruments, whether it is the World Bank or the IMF or the WTO, are all working only in the interests of the North.
Right.
And the South is very much exploited. You see. Fortunately, India, Brazil, China, all of them have come together in order to fight this. We should be able to fight it more. After all, in the WTO, there is only one country, one vote.
Right.
Unlike in many other places, in the World Bank and the IMF, that is not so. It is according to the investment strength of those countries. And therefore, America dominates them. But it is not so here. If we are able to really mobilize all the developing countries or the third world countries, we will be able to play a role in that case.
What kind of relationship do you see between India and Pakistan in 2025? And what will be the shape of South Asia?
I think, you see, that there is no other option. You cannot choose your neighbors.
Okay.
India and Pakistan are neighbors. And as neighboring countries who at one time, you see, shared many things, and who even today you see share many things in common: language, culture, literature, many things are common. These countries will have to live in peace, and so therefore we will have to solve our problems. And I think you see, if a solution can be found to the Kashmir problem which is satisfactory to the Kashmiri people, and at the same time you see agreed upon by India and Pakistan. If you are able to find a solution to that so-called Siachen glacier, which I don't think as to why it is going on all these years, we should be able to find a solution, or some of the other issues, then we'll have a peace in this region. And if there is peace in this region, there will be also development in this region. If development is held up in this region by any factor, it is the Indo-Pak difference that is holding it up. Otherwise, the SAARC countries will advance as much as the ASEAN.
Where do you see the largest minority, the Indian Muslim, placed in this emerging superpower scenario of India?
Unfortunately, you see, in the so-called superpower scenario, the theory of clash of civilization operates. And under that, the Muslim countries and the Muslim people are the targets. The so-called war on terror, which actually has become a means of really spreading more terror in the world, that is acting in such a way that tension is growing. They feel themselves as hunted people, as people under siege. Now that mentality can end only, you see, when all these theories are blown up. And if we can, you see to it in India. In India also, for instance, one of the latest reports, known as the Sachar Committee report, has pointed out that the status of the Muslims, their position in the country's politics, its economics, its social life, its administration, in every respect, you see, the Muslims are much less compared to their population strength. If they are anywhere, you see, more than their population strength, it is in jails. Because they are the hunted people, more or less.
So they have become the blacks of America.
They are the blacks of America. The Americans, of course, do not say that. They never admit it. They only point to us and to others in the world. Therefore, that question has to be solved according to the recommendations already made by the Sachar Committee report. And then we will be able to develop together.
Will India be forced to change some of its values, norms and attitudes because of globalization?
That is one big danger. I think, you see, we have a rich cultural heritage. We have traditions. Obviously, we have to move with the world. Nobody will deny that. But moving with the world doesn't mean, you see, accepting values that are alien to us and forgetting the rich traditions which are already with us. So therefore, you see, we have to keep up those traditions. We have to keep up all those values.
What are some of those values that we must hang on to?
Let me say that living together in a country, you see, which is so multilingual, multi-religious, multi-caste, even so we have been living together. You see, the newspapers, the media like yours, you see, always blow up the differences, the conflicts. But then we are living as neighbors, more or less. That is a tradition that we have learnt. I think there is much more of equality here than many other countries where racial inequality, you see, operates. Where, you see, others are looked upon as foreigners, as immigrants and so forth. In this country, you see, we have been able to absorb everyone. There is a famous poem by Rabindranath Tagore that in this country, in this great ocean of India, so many people have come and settled down here and we are mixed. So we have all that joint tradition. I call, you see, even our culture as the mixed culture of Ganga Jamuna belt, in which everyone has contributed.
What will be the role of religion in 2025? Is it going to increase or decrease?
Today it is very much there. That is the unfortunate truth. But I think, you see, in the coming years it will decrease. Even though I am not very sure as to what role caste will be playing as in the sidelines. Because politics has again brought up the caste issue, you see, to the fore. Because people can always appeal to the caste in order to get their votes.
Right. Will that increase? Do you think caste issues are going to decrease or increase?
In times to come it will improve, but only, you see, when the basic problem of education, you see, jobs, the economic situation, all these, you see, are much more on an equitable basis. Why is there reservation today? Because according to our needs, there is a scarcity of seats, so we have to reserve some for the others. But if there is universalization of education, and if everybody has equal access to education, and the deserving can go even up to higher education, then there won't be any need even for reservation. Then it will be possible for us to move together, but this will take quite a lot of time.
Describe in 3 words India as you see it today.
A great country, a proud country, but a country which under capitalism is unfortunately very much unequal. A country in which a part is the urban India and the rest is rural Bharat.
Okay.
So these contradictions are very much there.
Describe in 3 words India as you would like to see in 2025.
I would like to see a socialist India. You know, I'm a communist, so I would obviously like to see a socialist India in which there is much more of equality, where oppression, caste oppression and economic exploitation have been brought to an end.
Mr. Bardhan, thank you very much for your contribution, for being with us with Global Forum TV. Thank you.